Gonna show a trick to using a slide hammer to pull in hubs or whatever. You know, sometimes it's a hub, sometimes it's an inside axle bearing on a differential housing, but it's these slide hammers. There's a trick to these, and one of the things I do is dig up some different lugs, because you don't want to use these lugs, because when it goes in there it kind of messes up your taper. So I just always have some old lugs laying around, and I use the back side of the lugs. So most people take these and hit it like this, but the vibration will cause you to get really sore in this muscle. The next day you won't be able to touch that muscle. Really, a slide hammer is designed to sling it and don't be holding on to it, but you can't get enough kinetic energy. So what I first started doing when I come up with this idea is just pulling off my shirt, and then next time, you know, I just used my belt. This time I'm going to try something new. I'm just going to use a fender cover. I don't think it's going to work as good as a shirt, because the shirt's so thin it wraps around and holds this. But with this, you can follow through with your sling, and you can create more kinetic energy, and you don't have to kill your hands. So I've got it almost out, all of that energy absorbed into the towel. Now I can just tap it out with more control. Now I can work on this tie rod in. I always use an old set of dikes for these pins, because they kink, and you can use the dikes to manipulate them and unkink them. And then the main trick is pulling them out, because sometimes they are a little wavy, and like that one, but you can grip them, whereas with pliers you can't, and you can pry against the nut and just use it as a fulcrum, and the claws grip it. So wrong socket. As everybody knows, on these you don't use a pitchfork, especially if you're going to reuse this. Just put on some ear protection, hit the spindle. If you're a bad aim, which I'm not, my older brother got on to me about this. He's like, you better put on there, you never know. I'm like, dude, I don't miss, but he's right. You know, it's better to be safe than sorry. It takes 5 seconds, you know. On this bottom ball joint connection, you can do your separation here at the ball joint, but if you're not doing a ball joint, it's easier to assemble and disassemble by going for these 2 nuts in this bolt. ABS sensor. at all that rust on that axle. So this is extra labor time. I'm gonna have to wire brush this axle, and then I'll put some anti-seize on it. Just for real quick, show y'all what you should do and what most mechanics won't take the time to do. But I'm not most mechanics, and that's why when people say, how come you charge the same as the dealer? And I'm like, because they don't do this. So would you rather pay me the same price as the dealer and have these young fellas just fucking fly through your shit trying to make their hours and not give a shit about going the extra mile? The pride of not only a good job but doing the customer right, you know? They would have just stabbed that shit right back in. How do I know? Because I worked in the business my whole life, and I've watched mechanics do this shit every day. And to me, I mean, as long as they're doing the job, they're not fucking the customer over, but they're also not giving them, you know, an excellent job like they should get. You know, I work on cars like it's my own car. Like if this was my wife's car or my car, you know, that's the way customers should be treated. Check that tie rod in. Alright. This thing is a workhorse. It's an incredible little screwdriver. Watch me break it after saying that. I don't use a jig first because I can press it, you know, a good over 1/4 of an inch. So I like it to be as stable as possible. This thing, I don't never use it, so it's up inside of a hole. It's got shit all around it. This is a quick job. So I'm just gonna do something that makes most people probably be like cringing over this shit that I'm doing. But if the bearing comes out easy, then it's okay to do this trick. If it's gonna be hard, I'll back off and reset. I'll set this press up differently. And if it doesn't move easily right away, I'll reset. Woo! Whatever, man. Thought somebody was throwing me a pass. That got to the edge. like to just let the old parts fall in a box, just so it don't go banging and clanging around, and it's all in one spot. I don't have to go digging for it. It's going to come out, the tool and everything, so it'll be a little heavy. There we go. Now this is important. This bearing only goes one way. It'll go both ways, but it only works right one way. So you figure out which side is magnetic. This side with the more where you can really see the seal. This metal side is like it's a seal, but it's a metal look to it. You'd think it'd be the other way around, but the exciter ring is in the magnetic side. So you want this to go down because the hole is on the inboard of this hub. So put it backwards, it'll work. You'll have an ABS light on forever. And just confirm again, if you want to, that part goes down, down, down. So you gotta have something on the back side of this to an old bearing usually works good, because this groove right here lets that old bearing sit right in there, and it gets all these offsets up away from the press. You only need one of these usually for this, because this bearing's going to go flat against that jig. Not too high. So now we know we're going to use that old bearing. We need something that'll jig up to this side nicely, which will be, it could be this or this. So this will fall back in that groove. Make sure it sits in that groove. And it would be nice if I could use this, because it really fits that race better. I like to seat my clips. Just make sure that they fall in all the way. Nothing crazy. And I'll use a blunt end punch to do that. Because customer bought new hubs when we're going to skip a procedure, but on this, sometimes you can put it in the vise and walk it off with an air chisel. A lot of times you have to take a die grinder and cut an angle in it and then hit it with a chisel and it'll split it, but you also can get little fragments of this hardened grade A steel like just penetrating your body, and I've had it done where I'm just bleeding and I got metal inside me. But you have a wire feed, like I got a wire feed, I can just do like I'm doing a bead all the way around this, and it heats it up, it just falls off. That's probably the easiest way pain in the ass to drag the welder out. For me, I'm not like most guys that have a welder just ready to go next to me. Mine is put up in the back shop. Catch with these, when you press this on, this piece is going to easily press into this outer race right here, because it's pressing into these bearings which are engaged into this housing. But whenever this piece passes that one and it starts engaging into this inner race, it'll push it out of the bearing and sometimes destroy the bearing. So you always want to put a stop on the other side. Don't forget to put your shields back before you put the flange on, or you'll be fucking slide hammering that bitch back off again. Or you'll be slide hammering that flange back off again and possibly damaging your bearing. Or you could damage your bearing by slide hammering your new parts off. I just lightly tap these back on. Not a big deal. You don't even have to use that, but I'm getting old, and with a screwdriver is kind of hard on me. So this one, it is, sometimes I'll tap them just to get it rolling. But right back here is where you need something to stop this bearing. And I'm going to say it's going to be, I've got this one right here. So this will prevent this race from popping out of the sealed bearing, but the hole also allows, which it doesn't, the hub doesn't come past, but if it ever did in a situation like that, it allows clearance. Oh Lord, I have to release this some more. Not too much at once, because I don't want to pump that sucker any more than I have to. Okay, get that centered up. Oh, the kitty's blanket. Kitty blanket. You always got to have faith in your press and your ability to jig things up in a safe manner to keep your teeth. Again, when the axle nut gets torqued down to 180 foot-pounds, it'll do the final seat on this. So this last part, don't overpress it. Just till you just feel it stop, like right there. Like that piston all the way in when it's being stored. Okay. There we go. Wipe the excess grease off so it doesn't interfere with your ABS sensor right there. And as you can see, there's a little bit of grease in the ABS sensor hole. I'll clear that. clean the axle and put anti-seize. So I'm going to slip this lower ball joint studs in, and as they engage, it'll stabilize it so I can get the axle in. And then I'll throw in the strut bolts. Okay, I'm feeling it. The heat in the kitchen. Okay. Bolt. Come on. There you go. Alright. Oh my God. Another important step is to clean the ABS. ABS sensor, just barely tighten it. I recommend using a small ratchet. I'm going to go to a weak setting and just tap it. Now we go back to heavy setting. And that's tight. So we're going to go with this caliper bracket. I've already lubed these slide pins. As I was taking it apart, I was, like I did the axle, I was cleaning and lubing some stuff. I prefer to reuse these old slide shields because it's important for the pads to glide easily, and these have already been seated from the car brakes. You know, when you brake going forward, it presses on the lower ones. You brake in reverse, it presses on the upper shields, and they're really seated in nicely, and they just give you for a smoother operating pad than the new shields, than these new ones, which usually, you know, like at the Bosch kit, usually these originals are OEM most of the time. A lot of people don't replace them, but they also don't wire brush them, and they don't grease them. Or they'll put the new ones in and they're aftermarket and they don't work. They bind the pads up. They really do. They bind the pads up, and these caliper bracket bolts, they take blue Loctite, but these caliper bolts do not. So the bracket bolts always require Loctite. I always have people ask me, hey, what if these strip out? How do you get them out? I drill them out. And then what do? They're special, like you have to go to the dealer? No, I don't even put them. They're just there to hold the rotor while you do the brakes. You can put a couple lugs on to hold the rotor while you do the brakes. The wheel holds the rotor on when you're done. Don't have to have these screws. So don't worry. Be happy. When you worry, your face will frown. Life will bring everybody down. Don't worry, and be happy. Inboard pad, outboard pad. So if it didn't have these rotor screws and you put the pad on, the rotor's always going to be cocked just from the weight of it, and it's trying to pop this pad off, and you're having to struggle with it by the time, while you're trying to get your caliper on. So those hold it while you're doing that, but you can also just run a couple of lugs on if a car don't have those. Not every car has them anyway. So remember, we already depressed the piston on this caliper, and we expelled the fluid into a container to dispose of properly. Oh, liquid gold. Speaking of the slides to be cleaned and lubed so the pads can slide easy, it's not so the brakes work when they're clean. It's so when you let off the brakes, they back off. You don't want the pad sitting there rubbing the rotor, building extra friction you don't need, and that's what these springs are for. They're just wires, but they're springs. See, I have to hold the pad. So if these slide pins are the originals and they're seated tight and they're cleaned and lubed, these springs can do a better job at pulling those pads away from the rotor when the brakes are not in use. And you always have to be careful on these. It's an oval shaped pin, so the flat side of it has to fall in the screw. Don't let this side go up there, it'll bend it. I don't know if you can see how that could bend it. So it fits in there like a little puzzle there. Both sides are that way. You gotta rotate it so it falls in place. Tie rod back. Nice. Sometimes it wants to fight me. That ball, the whole knuckle was spinning, and they'll do that. You got to get the taper wedged up into the spindle so it'll kind of clamp down on it and keep it from spinning on you. I knew what it was doing, and I knew if I just kept running the gun and punching on it, like punching it upward, that it would go in. Same with the dikes. I put these pins in with them also. It's just easier to do everything. Okay, we're talking about how the axle goes up against the inner race of the bearing, and the hub with the lugs here go with the studs goes against the outer race of the bearing, and when you not tighten this down, it squeezes the bearing. I always hear people saying, "Oh, that bearing is a sealed bearing. It's already, it's not going to compress." Yeah, they compress, and that's why there's a torque spec for them. And so if I was just doing an axle, I would run this up snug, and when I torque it, it would torque instantly. But since that steel has to draw together, because these are new bearings and races and hubs all crushing together, you'll see when I torque it, it's going to take a little. But I'll run this up. Hungry? What'd you bring me to drink? 75. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright. You don't want to use any bars that flex. I use Granddaddy. Rotate the spindle out a little bit. I'm going to torque this and then I'll do that. I just want to get this done. This is the last step. Normally this thing would already be clicking, but because I put new bearings, it's still compressing that whole hub assembly. Set the lock. I think everybody knows to always back off your torque wrenches. Even in between doing that bearing, if it's going to be an hour before I need the torque or whatever, an hour and a half, I back it off. But don't back it off till it stops. When it stops, turn it forward just a little. So I come over here and I just check all my bolts. I make sure that I didn't bend the backing plate to be scraping the rotor. Look at all my connections. Look under here, make sure I didn't leave those loose. Everything looks good. I always like to look at people's tires and see. That's got a plug. That's got a plug right there. So I'm just looking for nails and shit. Sometimes they have nails and it ain't leaking. You don't know it yet. A trick I like to show people too is not necessarily on this, but on big truck tires, lifting the tire on, is I tuck the bottom in and I roll it forward, and as I roll it back I just lift it with my foot. Like I'm way back here, my arms are doing no lifting, my back's doing no lifting. On all wheels, I'll lightly run them up first, get everything centered up before I hit it. But on these washers hold the hubcaps, and the bevel of the lugs holding the wheels, so just so nothing's binding, I like to push them up flush into the hub. I can see they're all centered. And I don't know if you saw the hubcap center itself. So I roll them up pretty slow at first and start picking it up, and then I do my cross pattern. A little at a time, of course. This side, I want to double check everything. Look at all of these bolts. Check the backing plate, that it's not bent from me wrestling with it. Sometimes I bend them a little, like, and I'll usually just kind of push them away, whether I'm, you know, I don't even see it touching the rotor, but I still kind of bend them away just to make sure. And everything's good here. ABS sensor. Look at the tire for screws and nails. Lift the tire with my foot. And by the way, that works on big truck tires. Your feet, if you stand on one leg, you can go up on your tippy toes. I'm 210 pounds. My foot will do this and it'll lift my body. So our legs and feet are so much more stronger than our hands and our arms. Or shall I say arms. Our arms.